Hi, welcome. My name is Matthew Pittman, and I will be walking you through my organizational profile of Ivy Tech North Central Region, the Online Technology Department, which is where I work. This is for my EDUC 6105 course at Walden University. A little background on Ivy Tech Community College. Ivy Tech Community College is in the state of Indiana. It's our statewide community college system. It is singly accredited, which means all of our regions and programs have the same accreditation. That helps with transferring courses to other colleges and things like that. We offer associate degrees, technical certificates, certifications, and workforce training. We have 14 regions throughout Indiana. I work for the North Central region, which is where my profile focuses. We have 3 campuses, one in South Bend, the main campus, and then 2 other campuses, one in Elkhart and one in Warsaw. I've worked at the South Bend and Elkhart campuses. We serve about 8,500 students, and we have semester to semester about 500 faculty, full-time faculty and adjuncts that work for us. This department has 13 employees, 8 of which are in South Bend. Again, that's the main campus with a bit more people there. 2 in Elkhart and 3 in Warsaw. We provide two-way course support. Two-way courses are the ones that run across Polycom units. It's two-way broadcast television. You can see in here from each site, sort of like a live distance class. We also offer test proctoring services for online classes. And one of our main focuses, and what has become a bigger focus of our department, is learning management system support. At Ivy Tech, we use Blackboard 9.1, just like Walden uses now, and that is the primary focus of what I do in our department is Blackboard support. We support not only faculty, but also the students, so we do both sides of the support. Talk about is some of the changes that my department has gone through in the last year or so. In June 2011, when my boss came on, Michelle Jackson, came on board, several things were going on. First was we had been undergoing a reporting structure change, and this is actually before I started working for our department. We had gone under a reporting structure change. We had previously reported to the Computer and Technology Services Department, which is sort of basically IT. And we had changed to report to academic affairs. One of the things that in the statewide system they want to do was change how our department worked from less of a help desk type of a role to more support for academic affairs and growing online programs and doing more instructional design and course building for hybrid and regional online courses. So that was one major change we were going through. And the other thing is, previous to my current boss coming on board, there were some major cultural issues in the department. Very dysfunctional team. It's supposed to be a regional team, and the way it worked previous to her starting was more of a, Elkhart did their own thing with little oversight from the main campus in South Bend, and Warsaw was just sort of out there, and no one knew what Warsaw was doing because there was very little, if any, communication with what was going on in Warsaw. So it was a dysfunctional team in the sense that the 3 campuses were not working together as a regional team. Even just at the South Bend campus, which I focused most of this on since it's obviously a larger department with more than half of our staff region-wide working in South Bend, the South Bend had some real staffing issues, employees not getting along, things not being taken care of by management. So there was some major dysfunction going on, and that was actually causing a lot of issues to the second bullet point there. The department's outside perception. It was seen by most faculty and adjuncts at all 3 campuses that the department wasn't one you could really go to for help. You wasn't thought, oh, let's go to online technologies. We can get assistance with Blackboard there. Most requests would sit there for 2 weeks or more before anything would get solved. And that's not a good perception for, service type department where we are providing a service to the faculty and adjuncts here. So we had some major issues, and going back to the dysfunctional part, we also had just some structural issues there where people, they had defined roles in such a way that it was hard to maximize the number of people we had working in our department working on the issues they needed to be worked on. So there was just some issues with not wanting to give up the power, being the only person that could solve a particular issue, which was a huge problem, and it slowed down the workload. We didn't have a good balance in work. One thing I wanted to describe, a quote from the interview I did with Michelle Jackson, was her description of one of the very first employee meeting they had, and it was a staff meeting, but it only involved the South Bend campus. And this is a direct quote from Michelle. An employee decided to yell at another one in front of the entire staff because they did not agree with what the other person was saying. The body language of basically everyone in the room is that they did not want to share anything or even be in the same room with one another. So I think that goes to show the culture in the department really needed to change. Not only because the department needed to work together as a team, but also to better serve the faculty and the students that we are charged with supporting. So some of the things that Michelle implemented to change these and make these changes in the structure work. First was she knew the culture had to change, so she tried to instill a culture of openness. To do this, one of the things she did was be really open about her schedule and her calendar, and started off by sharing that with everyone else in the department so that everyone would know, this is what Michelle's working on. So you knew she was always working for you and she wasn't off doing whatever she felt like, which was a perception that many employees had previous to Michelle coming on board, that the leadership was sort of off doing whatever they felt like doing and not necessarily working on work-related stuff. And then she expanded that to having the other employees share their calendars so that everyone in the department could see who was working, when they were working, and that they were actually working. That went a long way to opening up, the office so that everybody felt connected and knew what everybody else was doing. So there was a feeling that you weren't alone going out and doing all the work yourself. She also worked hard to build personal connections between leader and employee. And I know we touched on this many times throughout this course and in the discussion boards particularly, talking about how communication was so important. You had to get in there and meet with your employees and understand what you could do to help them. She really described what Beach described in one of the chapters of the book that we read. And I'll just quote this from my paper. Michelle exhibits the behavior that Beach describes. And then a quote from the Beach book. They know that success depends on their subordinates, with whom they must deal honestly and respectfully. And I know Michelle really took that to heart in her understanding of how to develop a culture of openness and a culture of working together in the department. And I think this really leads to my second major bullet point. One of the things that Michelle really brought to the office that was a big change for everyone was leadership. There wasn't really good defined leadership before. Everybody was sort of off doing their own thing and just sort of getting through the day without worrying about who was really in charge. And things didn't have a central reporting structure. No one was making those command decisions. And that's something that Michelle really brought to the team. There was someone you could go to now who was in charge and cared about the decisions that were being made. And that was really important to giving people a role and making them feel better about their jobs. Another thing she did was some of the employees in the department had some issues with having confidence in their work. We had one employee who ended up leaving our department in February in South Bend, and she had a bad attitude about all of this. She didn't feel that she was getting the attention or responsibilities that she felt she deserved. She was unwilling to give up a lot of her power or her spheres of influence, the things that she was in charge of, and allow other people to help with them because that was her thing. So that was a problem. And in defending those things, she was being very combative and very vitriolic. So it wasn't a good relationship she had with many of the other employees she worked with or the faculty and staff that she supported. So one of the things that needed to happen in that case was you needed to build up those things and make the employees realize they are doing good work, and we appreciated everything that they were doing for the department. Unfortunately, that employee, didn't stay with us. We also had a couple of employees leave in Elkhart, which opened up some positions. But Michelle, instead of seeing this as a loss, saw this as an opportunity. One of the things, as I described before, that we had issues with in the department was having staff that could appropriately respond to the issues that we needed and to help balance the workload. We had so much work coming in on the Blackboard or LMS support side and so little on the other ends that only 2 people out of the 13 in our department were originally able to help with Blackboard support issues. Well, 2 out of 13 is not a good percentage. So what Michelle did is she ramped up Blackboard support, and as she put it, and I'll just quote again from my interview with her, I brought several people up to speed on Blackboard and grew the Blackboard administrator team from 2 to 5, with a minimum of 1 on each campus to serve that campus's faculty and students. Which was a great change, okay, and made a lot of sense. And so she was able to, through these openings in Elkhart and South Bend, to renegotiate those job descriptions with HR and bring those stakeholders in. And the campuses themselves, Elkhart and Warsaw, also had one person switch out later in the game. Redo those job descriptions into positions that could support Blackboard, added that to the job description, changed their title a bit, ended up getting a little bit more money for those people, so it was good for the people that got the job as well. I was actually one of the people that originally got hired in Elkhart in September, October to come on as a Blackboard administrator, and it was interesting to come into that department after some of the changes had taken place, but some of the other ones were still ongoing, and I could really see the difference that she was making. South Bend, when that position opened up in February, that was when the employee left from South Bend, as I mentioned earlier. Michelle took the idea to promote someone from the inside, and she really was demonstrating something else Beach said about convincing the organization's members and relevant outsiders that things are better having undergone the change, and then as also was said about building a coalition, okay? As Dr. Bly put it in one of the videos that we watched, Dr. Bly talked about creating coalitions by identifying those that would be more likely to support the changes that were needed. Okay, so she was building that coalition, knowing that, me being a new person and just having, been trained in a way that this was a regional team and a great team to work for, she promoted me to South Bend to take that role on because she knew I was already on board, and he gave her an opportunity to hire someone else that we could just train with this new mindset of openness and working together, and it worked out pretty well. So let me advance here. Outcomes. Okay, so I finished this kind of interview stuff going on in July, and to find out how this came about, because obviously I can't just take my own opinion because that's biased, I did interview a couple of faculty members and just had some conversations with some deans and other folks at the South Bend and Elkhart campuses and at the Warsaw campus, and just talked to them, and almost unanimously the response was support had improved tremendously, particularly in the area of Blackboard support. Request times went from, in last year, 2 years ago, taking 1 to 2 weeks on average, okay, as a normal support time, down to 1 to 2 days. I mean, that's a huge improvement. Faculty were just so pleased. They're like, now when we send in requests, we're going to get an answer within 24 or 48 hours. And they said even on weekends, it's not unusual for them to send a request in on Friday, and they'll get a response from someone on our team over the weekend. And they just really appreciate that because it lets them better serve students. Particularly moving in an online direction, since we deal mostly with online classes. You've got to be available. You got to meet the students where they're at. And as we all know, since we're taking online classes here at Walden, online students work on the weekends, they work at night, and so you need to be able to have support that's also going to work those hours as well, or be available during those hours. So faculty and adjuncts really changed their opinion of us. Some faculty reported being, almost scared to come to our office because of the, kind of bad attitude or the aura of, negativeness that came from our department, from our office, that they had kind of shied away from our office. They preferred to call or leave a message or send an email rather than actually come down and see us when they had issues, or even just not even try to get help, just try to, bull through it themselves without any assistance. But now they felt like, when they call, one person I interviewed was Dr. Jojo at our institution. And she said that, she went from having, pretty negative feelings about the department. Our department was combative and unhelpful, frustrated by the amount of time it took to assist her. That now that when she calls, she feels confident that there's an expert on the other end of the phone call or responding to her emails, and that her issues will be resolved in a timely manner. So it's just been a great, the changes have been great for faculty, for adjuncts, for students. We offer training for students now, which is something that we never did before. There was really very little support for students before for Blackboard LMS, and so we've really ramped up that side of operations, and students seem to be excited about that, and faculty have commented on how much they appreciate that because it makes their jobs easier when they don't have to spend a lot of time in class teaching students how to use the various Blackboard tools. They can count on our department to provide that training for them, or we can even come to their class and provide that training for them, which is something we never did before. And really the other thing, and maybe what these two things stem from, is the improved culture and working environment in our department. It's just an entirely different place. We had our first all-staff meeting since Michelle's first one back in June or July of 2011. After that really nasty one she quit having staff meetings because you just couldn't get everyone in the department into a room together. We just reinstituted this policy in May of this year, and our first staff meeting was all the folks from South Bend and Elkhart. We connected with Elkhart via our two-way technology, and had a staff meeting together, and it was a wonderful experience. People were laughing, having fun, getting through some important information, and just opening up the lines of communication. It's been really, really good. And then in July, actually, we had another staff meeting, and this time we even brought Warsaw in, which was great, because Warsaw has always notoriously, because they're a bit farther in distance from the campuses, and Elkhart and South Bend, they've always notoriously kind of been left out or put out, in their own little world and left out there. And we really wanted to bring them in and make sure they felt part of the regional team and give them a voice in the decisions that we were making and what was going on with our department. So it was really great to have them there, and they enjoyed being involved. So it's been a great change, having a work environment that people like to come into. We've had a couple new employees, that have commented, they're like, we don't even know how to describe the culture in our department. It's just so much fun to come into work. We enjoy being there. We enjoy being around the other people we work with, and it's just a great experience. The other thing that we've done is just expand on communication. We have these monthly staff meetings. We've actually developed a second group in our office for the Blackboard administrators, since that's such a huge role we have. And we have monthly Blackboard administrator meetings using some Blackboard tools like Blackboard Collaborate, so we can meet together and talk about Blackboard-specific issues. In addition, we also use Blackboard IM to facilitate communication that way, so we are always really connected. When Michelle in her office, me in my office, Steve, who works in our Elkhart campus, and Kristen at our Warsaw campus, we're always connected to Blackboard IM, so that we're always able to quickly work together on issues. Blackboard IM has some great collaborative issues, so like if Steve is experiencing an issue and he needs some help troubleshooting it, he can app share with me and I can see his screen and we can work through whatever the issue is together. We also use the chat functionality, and we have a department-wide and a Blackboard administrator-specific chat rooms, so we just get into the chat rooms and whoever's on can get there and they can chat. And it's good not only just for what's happening with this issue, Warsaw, have you seen this issue? Have you resolved this issue? Or, whatever kind of thing we want to communicate. But it's also a nice way to just communicate. Sometimes you have to just be, let your hair down a little bit, be a little less, work-related, and have some fun. We share videos on there that we find on YouTube, funny things like that. So it's been a really good way to connect people. And that has been a really important part of the changes that Michelle has brought to the table. References, and I would just say in closing, because I know this was going a little long, I really thought that some of the major changes that Michelle brought to the table weren't necessarily structural changes, like we really made huge changes. I mean, she redid some job descriptions, changed some reporting, things like that. But really what the big thing is Michelle demonstrated a lot of those traits of a transformational leader. She jumped in, realized this is not a tenable situation. We cannot keep going the way we've been going. So we need to make some major changes. And what she ended up doing was, instituting an open and communication-oriented culture where everyone feels comfortable with communicating with each other, and that's been very successful. So that's kind of what I've brought away from this, and I think it's something that I also felt was the takeaway from this course was communication is hugely important, because as long as you can communicate with with your other employees. You have a good rapport with them. You can communicate why a change is important or why we need to change the way we do something. If they trust you, they have that relationship with you, that they know you're being honest with them. So I think that's really important. So these were some of the references I used for my paper. I quoted a few of them in this presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that was listed there so I can give credit to everyone that inspired me about this presentation. And also, obviously, I talked to Michelle Jackson and some other faculty at Ivy Tech Community College. So thank you for listening. Bye.